Doesn't get any better than Ross Tucker is going to join us today on Locked On Lions.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's good, everybody? Matt Dery with you on a Thursday edition of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, Thursday, May 2nd into Friday, May 3rd. Thanks for making us your first listen, checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. Lions draft still in play. Want to talk about it with Ross Tucker, our buddy from the Ross Tucker podcast. We'll do that in a second. First, Locked On Lions brought to you by Monopoly Go. Got that competitive side? If you're a fan of playing to win, try Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. Join your friends and download Monopoly Go right now, free on the App Store or on Google Play. Follow me on Twitter at Dery Speaks, at Locked On Lions, Matt Dery Facebook fan page. And again, thanks for those of you watching on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel. I thought of this guy the other day because the Lions went out and drafted a 7th-round pick that they're calling a dirt bag and dirt ball. And I said, nobody better than to talk about offensive line and late round picks and everything else than the legendary Ross Tucker. Ross Tucker podcast, Westwood 1 CBS joins us today. Ross, great to see you.
Matt, always great to see you. Always great to talk with you. You know how I feel about Lions fans and the Lions in general. I lost track of how many former teammates are on the coaching staff. Brunell, Antoine Randall, Dan Campbell, Steve Hayden. I mean, yeah. It's crazy. And Hank Fraley and I were never teammates, but we're friends because of the whole offensive lineman thing. Then obviously we've gotten into it, me knowing Alex Anzalone since he was 5 years old from my hometown. Same hometown as Taylor Swift, as I'm sure we've discussed in the past as well. But yes, I am glad to talk about the Lions in any way for a lot of different reasons. But one is just so cool to see this resurgence by this team. And as I know we'll get into at some point, your listeners or viewers on YouTube are amazing. Every time I come on and tell them about myfrontpagestory.com, they definitely check it out, and several of them make orders because it is the best Mother's Day gift ever. So appreciate it. Great to talk with you. And how about the Lions fans and the city of Detroit during the draft? Matt, that was nuts. Well, I mean, listen, that was crazy. Were you down there for it?
I was down there. You said, you tweeted this out beforehand, and I give you credit. You tweeted out maybe Monday or Tuesday before the draft last week. You said, hey, listen, these things get crazy. You're going to see a lot of people. You spent time, of course, here in Detroit for that first playoff game. So you kind of called it. You knew I didn't think you probably thought it'd be $750K though. Right, Ross? I mean, that was a lot.
No, I have, to be honest with you, once you get over 20,000 people in in a city block, I lose count. You can tell me it's 70. You can tell me it's 200,000. How did I even know? Who's the guy that's sitting there going, okay, there's Matt Dery, then there's this person. How are you counting 750,000 people? I have no idea how they make those estimates.
It is a little crazy. And tell me this about the draft, because now it's this 3-day event. It became this big deal. You know, Eminem's up on stage, all these guys. Would you have liked that as a player with all that hype around? Or did you like it when you were selected, that it was just, more of a quiet ordeal?
Well, so first of all, I was an undrafted free agent.
That's right.
So my experience is a little bit different. It's funny, Matt, you'll appreciate this. It was 2001. And I think back then, the draft was 3 rounds on Saturday, and then the last 4 on Sunday, something like that.
I think you're right.
And my parents had just got me my first cell phone a month earlier, literally, right? For my 22nd birthday. And I'll never forget, I had to give every team the number to my dorm room because that's what they were going to call. And to be there, and if you remember, the Bengals did not have a single winning season in the 90s, right? So they called me in the first round, Matt. And I answered the phone. I was like, I'm ready. I'm ready to be a Bengal, And they were like, yeah, Ross, we just wanted to tell you you're high on our list if you don't get drafted to maybe get signed as a free agent.
Wow.
That's why they were calling. And then they called me the next day, in the 4th round, said the same thing. I was like, okay, yeah, I remember when you said that yesterday. So it's just funny how the process works. If I was a high pick, I have mixed emotions. I think there's a lot of it's a great experience if you're in the draft city, and there's a lot of value to be gained by that. Being in that draft city, there's some business opportunities, the exposure that you get, walking on the stage. But man, that'd be pretty cool to be back in your hometown too, with your high school coaches and your friends and family. That's kind of the shame of it, Matt. I wish these guys could do both. I wish they could have both experiences, and then they can decide which one was better. But that never happens, right? Like you pick one or the other, so nobody really knows if the other one's better or worse.
What do you think of the Brad Holmes approach? First round trades up to get Terrion Arnold. Third round trades up. Fourth round trades up. Sixth round, he was moving and going to get his guys, almost like, not that the window is small, but it's almost like, hey, we're here to win right now.
Love the aggressiveness. And I honestly, I thought the real slam dunk was Terrion Arnold. I mean, look, we could go right down the line. I mean, that Giovani Manu guy, are you kidding me with what that guy looks like? That is an exciting prospect for them. But Terrion Arnold, Rakestraw, the Detroit Lions had the 29th pick in the draft. Matt, there is no way, not a single mock draft, not a single human being alive thought the Lions were going to get Terrion Arnold. Maybe you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but they would have had to go up, you would have thought, to 15, 16, 17. Sure. Listen, I do the Eagles preseason games on TV. I was shocked that the Eagles had their pick of the corners at 22. This is the NFL passing league. Some people think corner is like the second most important position after quarterback, and the Eagles have their pick of the litter at 22. When that happened, I thought it was very smart of Brad Holmes and the Lions to be aggressive, go up and get a guy a lot of people thought was the best corner in the draft in Terrion Arnold. We all know the deal. Huge position of need for the Lions. To be selecting 29th overall and to be able to come out of the draft with arguably the number one corner, that is just gigantic. And, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I think Brad Holmes and the Lions are both.
Let me ask you this, because you mentioned the Eagles, and obviously they got their guy, and they got DeJean too, and all of that. But why did all these there were mock drafts with 5-6 corners going in the first round, yet Rakestraw goes from, like you said, mocked at some, but 229 to the Lions, or even early 30s. Why do you think the corners lasted as long as they did?
Well, let's start with the fact that everybody wanted quarterbacks, receivers, and O-line. I mean, the first defensive player didn't even go off the board till 15.
Yeah.
And so then you get to 15, and now, teams are usually going to pick, I feel like, the D lineman over the corner. So no defensive players go till 15. The Colts take Latu. Then you've got Turner going and Byron Murphy. And next thing you know, other teams want O-lineman or whatever. Next thing you know, it's 22 and all the corners are on the board. I'm a big fan of Rakestraw. Both these guys, Matt, it's so funny. They're Detroit kind of guys.
Yeah.
I mean, they are both feisty, aggressive, versatile. I mean, Dan Campbell's going to love them. Lions fans are going to love them. They must be, I can't even imagine how ecstatic they are that they came out of this draft with those two guys. I mean, Rakestraw at 61 really surprises me. It's because of his versatility and tenacity. To have two of those guys, even if only one is ready to go as a rookie, that's still really valuable.
Does Rakestraw drop to 61 because of the 40 time? And do some of these GMs not think like Brad Holmes and go, look, we're just taking a football player. So he didn't run a 4.40. So his catch-up speed might not be there. But like you said, he sticks his head in there and is a good football player.
So here's what I would say. Small and slow is not a combo that GMs love or that they want to bet on. To be a smaller guy and not run a good 40 time, that tells you how much the Lions liked him to even take him in the second round. I mean, think about the type of player and baller he must be to go in the second round. I think they just have a tough time picking guys like that high. One of the reasons why the Eagles took Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo, man, that would have been like what, a 34, 45-minute drive for him up to Detroit. But one of the reasons why they took Quinyon Mitchell, I think, is because he and Arnold, they love them both, but Quinyon Mitchell's bigger and he's faster. So if you're picking between two guys, they're both really good players. Quinyon 6 foot, $195, ran a 4.33. I think it's just easier, especially if you're a database team, to do that. Hopefully you saw my article a couple weeks ago for the 33rd team, maybe even last week, because it was talking about how teams could learn a lesson from the Lions. Yeah. The Lions just take good players. They don't care about the positional value. They don't care about some of those testing numbers. Gibbs and Campbell and Laporta and Branch. Maybe more teams should be like the Lions and just draft really good football players without being overly concerned about this other stuff.
Yeah, Sione Vaki is another one I want to talk to Ross about because he's a good football player. Is he a running back? Is he a safety? We'll get into more of the Lions picks with Ross Tucker next, right here on Locked On Lions. First, though, I got to tell you about Monopoly Go. I talked about it before, but it's just a fun game. It's a lot of fun, and you got to download it and play it, all right? Flag on the play. I already talked about that, Matt, for the last couple of weeks, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards, and the more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko game. They got it all. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or even rent frenzies. There's something for everybody to discover at Monopoly Go and in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench, download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on with our friends at Monopoly Go. Follow him on all social media platforms. It's Ross Tucker, at Ross Tucker NFL, former NFL offensive lineman, of course, CBS Westwood 1 and the Ross Tucker podcast, and also the 33rd team as well. You mentioned before about Giovani Manu, and people are going to say, well, Ross, you like the pick, the size, and everything else, but you traded a pick for next year's a pick. You traded a 4th rounder this year. You move up to get a guy that's playing in British Columbia, but the Lions must know something here. What do you think?
Well, it reminds me on some level of when the Eagles drafted Jordan Mailata. Now, keep this in mind. Jordan Mailata had never played the sport of football before, right?
Yeah.
But he's now become one of the better left tackles in the NFL. The numbers of Giovani Manu are ridiculous. Just looking at that guy, I mean, he can go straight to the WWE if the football thing doesn't work out for him. It was super duper impressive to see what he could bring to the table. I don't love trading next year's 3rd, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't love that. But if you like the player that much, then you want to get him now and you think it's worth it, right? So the Eagles did that a year ago to get Keely Ringo, the corner out of Georgia. They traded the following year's 3rd. So if you have that much conviction of a guy and you have him as a 3rd round player, well, then why not get him in the 4th round? Just use your 3rd round pick the following year if you think he's that caliber of player. They didn't have a 3rd round pick at that point. So,
right.
But obviously they valued him that highly.
You can get Giovani Manu to be security tonight for Sixers Knicks in the arena. It might be needed, right? All right. So when you're a project like that, as somebody that played in the league as an offensive lineman, as somebody that went undrafted, like you said, what does he got to do? Like, how does he get on the field fast? And is this an opportunity where Taylor Decker on the last year of his deal, could this be the Decker replacement in 2 years?
Well, I think their hope is that by the end of the year, he'll be far enough along that they'll have some type of idea as to whether or not he can be that guy for them. I would suspect that if they're not able to retain Taylor, that they'd probably bring somebody else in as competition in case Manu wasn't ready. It's ironic because the Eagles actually drafted Andre Dillard, even though they already had Mailata. And Andre Dillard in the first round was thought to be the heir apparent to Jason Peters. And then Mailata just beat him out. Mailata was just better than him. It ended up being really a wasted draft choice by the Eagles because they already had Mailata. They didn't have enough confidence that he'd be able to do it, that they felt like they needed to take somebody else just in case. That might be where the Lions are. I mean, what he needs to do is just watch everything that Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell do, right? Just watch those guys every day, mimic what they do, work on his craft, get as many reps as he can, and let the chips fall where they may and see where he is at the end of the year. They'll either try to bring back Taylor Decker, or they'll feel like, you know what? We don't need to bring back Taylor. He's going to get big money somewhere else. And we'll go with Manu and a second-round pick, or Manu and a first-round pick. I don't think they would just go with Manu, or Manu and a baseline veteran type to make sure there's at least a floor at the position.
Brad Holmes said, we're talking to Ross Tucker. Brad Holmes said when he took Sione Vaki, moved up to get him, and just said, look, I went to his pro day and he worked out at safety. He worked out as running back and he was exhausted and still did his special teams workout. And he's like, that's a Lion pick. They don't know where they're going to play him. They're not sure, but that kind of fits the mold of what you were talking about earlier, doesn't it?
You know what? It does. That's the Lions. I mean, I think they announced him as a running back, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they did. Mm-hmm.
That is interesting to me to see where he ends up, because that is rare. I mean, there's guys like that play multiple positions, like Cooper DeJean plays nickel or outside, can play safety. But on both sides of the ball, that's wild. But on some level, it gives him a better chance to be a contributor, because if it doesn't work out on one side, maybe they can move him to the other. I do think he's got some ability to be one of their kick returners and to be really good on special teams. And I think that's a big reason why teams drafted a guy like Vaki, is because special teams are going to be a lot bigger now that we know what the deal is with the new kickoff rule. They're going to be a much bigger deal. I mean, there's going to be a lot more kickoff returns. We're going to go back to having 4 core special teams that you need to worry about.
They get Mekhi Wingo, I thought was a steal in the 6th round from LSU. And then Christian Mahogany, the offensive lineman from Boston College. Kind of fits again. You need depth up front. Wingo to me was a better player than a 6th round pick, but coming off an injury. What do you think about what Brad Holmes did with the last 2 rounds?
Yeah, so I don't know as much about Wingo, but I did Mahogany's game last year against Army, and I like him. I mean, I think he's a road grader. I think he's very physical. I'm a little surprised he lasted until the 6th round. I thought he'd be maybe even a day 2 guy, but at worst, 4th or 5th round. I thought people would look at him and say, this guy could probably start for us at guard next year. So that surprised me. I like that they brought him in after losing, Jonah Jackson, because now it's like, okay, you have Glasgow, you have Zeitler, who's up there in years. Maybe Mahogany isn't ready to roll right away, but maybe he proves this year, kind of like a Manu situation, that he can be the guy next year.
Rest of the division, I want to get to that, and also the NFC. Is there anything else from those 3 days of the draft that stood out, non-Detroit related, Ross, for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Falcons. You got to be kidding me. I mean, and I guess that's somewhat topical to the Lions because you took Hooker last year, and there's a lot of talk about Jared's contract, but Hooker's sort of the potential heir apparent, or at least the developmental number 3. But the Falcons, it's just comical. I mean, everything about it's comical. First of all, they're going to lose a draft pick because they tampered with Kirk Cousins. Secondly, the people that are applauding them for succession planning, there was no planning here. If they were really planning things, they wouldn't have given Kirk Cousins $100 million fully guaranteed coming off a torn Achilles if they knew they were going to take Penix Jr. at number 8.
Right.
It's an over allocation of concurrent resources. It's asinine. The value of a rookie quarterback is the fact that they're on their rookie contract. At best, Penix Jr. will play in year 3. Cousins even has $10 million fully guaranteed in year 3. It's just they're the odds-on favorite in the NFC South. Matt, they haven't had a playoff game since 2017. You can't trade down from 8 to 13 with the Raiders or 14 with the Saints, get a king's ransom, and still get the number 1 player in the draft on defense off the board. It's just ludicrous to me. And like I said, everywhere on social media at Ross Tucker NFL, to me, it just reeks of a head coach and a GM doing what's best for them and their job security and trying to buy themselves a minimum 3, maybe 4 or 5 year window with the Cousins to Penix Jr. transition before they get fired. I would have fired him on the spot, to be honest with you, but that's just me.
And real fast on this, I felt everyone's like, oh, Kirk Cousins must be upset. If I'm Penix, I'm upset. Because if, like you said, if he ends up with the Raiders or Saints or Broncos or somebody, at least he'd have a chance to play. He's not going to play for a while. I wouldn't like that at all.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I'm sure he'd rather play. But boy, it feels like they're setting him up to be in a good position, to be able to watch from a guy like Cousins for a couple years and then be ready to roll as a rookie. They're setting him up to succeed. Listen, there are quarterbacks that we see as failures after 2 years. Yep. We won't see Penix as a failure until at the end of the third one at the fastest, and probably not till after the fourth one.
That's a good point. All right, I want to ask Ross about the NFC North and the draft and what the division looks like following the draft next. But first, what about our friends at FanDuel? It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Mentioned it earlier with Ross. Knicks, Sixers tonight, Pacers, Bucks. All of that for you right there at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Visit it. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Ross Tucker with us, NFL analyst. He's the man. We love Ross Tucker at Ross Tucker NFL along all social platforms. All right, tell me this, Ross. You look at the Bears. Everybody's going, 10, 11, 12 wins maybe this year. Are you buying that now that they have Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze? And what about the rest of the division too?
Yeah, I think the Lions are still the class of the division. I think the Packers are second. I think the Bears, still a work in progress. I know people are really excited about them. They got a lot of new moving parts. A new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, 2 new receivers. The defense did come on towards the end of last year, so I feel pretty good about them on that side of the ball. But to me, they're still clearly third in the division, and I think that the Vikings are pretty clearly last. I had Greg Cosell on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast this week. He's pretty skeptical of J.J. McCarthy. Said, he had a lot of very clean pockets. He had to put everything into it to try to be able to complete some of these passes down the field. I thought that was telling. And honestly, you look at what the Vikings tried to trade to get to number 3. They wanted Drake May. They didn't even want J.J. McCarthy.
What about, you mentioned the Packers. They had 11 picks, loaded up on defense, Bullard, the safety. They took the tackle in the first round, the linebacker in the second round, Cooper. They've added a lot of athleticism on that defense, haven't they? And it's a good, going with that young offense that really was good toward the end of last year. I know Packer fans are thinking they're going to win this division this year.
Well, they'll certainly have a good chance based on how they played at the end of the year. But they did need to replenish the ranks a little bit at O-line with Morgan. And, they're a good drafting team. You look at what they've had the last few years. It's pretty impressive what they've been able to put together. And now they got some young speed with Cooper and Bullard.
Final thing you mentioned before about the Bears and Caleb Williams. How good do you think he's going to be as the #1 quarterback and obviously the #1 overall pick?
I think he'll be good. Everybody that came on my show seem to like a guy like Jaden Daniels more than him. I mean, Phil Simms, Greg Cosell, Chase Daniel. I was struck by how many people seemed higher on Jaden Daniels than they were on Caleb Williams. I don't know what that says. If that says more about Daniels or more about Williams.
Final thing, Mother's Day is coming up, Ross. MyFrontPageStory.com would be a great gift. There it is for those of you watching on YouTube. See that? That's the beauty of what Ross Tucker does, ladies and gentlemen. But
well, the beauty of your listeners, all Lions fans are amazing, but
yes,
especially your listeners, they take action and they're smart. They realize that moms are everybody's number one draft pick and that they should go to myfrontpagestory.com and get the best, most unique Mother's Day gift of all time. You literally, Matt, while you're driving home, you talk to one of the writers for 10 minutes, tell them how great your mom is. They write this incredible story. And for people that are watching on YouTube or whatever, you can see it's framed, looks like it's on the cover of the newspaper, pictures of her and the kids. When we got one for my mom, and she read the quote from my sister saying she wouldn't be the woman she is today if it weren't for my mom just started bawling. She has the story hanging up next to the front door. I think it's a little bit weird, but that shows you how much she loves it. MyFrontPageStory.com, MyFrontPageStory.com. Do not blow it, fellas. Best Mother's Day gift ever.
We love you, Ross. Great to see you, buddy. And as always, we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Matt.
There he is. Ross Tucker with us. Ross Tucker Football Podcast, CBS Westwood 1. He is the best.